out of Indiana. We next moved to Joe Harbert in Ohio. And last but not least, Ed Kreitz of the VintageFuturistSociety.com calls in with a few of his encounters. These encounters run the gamut, and I was very happy that they all called in to share. You can subscribe to Into the Fray for free in iTunes and most all other podcatchers. Be sure to leave a rating and review. That helps us get more listeners, which means more encounter stories for you. However, if you do want more, there is the option of ITF Insider. There is a monthly and a yearly option for you to decide upon. So lately for Insider, I mentioned this last week on the show that I was going to be going out of state. And if you do not follow me on any of the social media sites, then you wouldn't know this. But I went to Fox Hollow Farm in the state of Indiana. And if you are not familiar with Fox Hollow Farm, it is the former home of serial killer Herb Baumeister. It was covered on not only Ghost Adventures, but also a very chilling paranormal witness. I had the opportunity to sit down with not only the owners of the home, but also the man that rented the apartment above the garage, the very haunted apartment above the garage, and many places in the home are said to be very, very active. Not only did I have contact with those people, but I also got to meet a medium. His name is Brian Saunders, and I will tell you here and now that he is absolutely legitimate. I did go into that side of it quite skeptical, but he blew us out of the water, all of us. And this is a man that Rob Graves, one of the owners of the home, has invited in before. And the only reason he came back was because of the fact that this dude is on point. So feel free to look him up under The Healing Medium on Facebook. You will definitely be hearing more from Brian. I got to meet a man that knew Herb Baumeister personally. And all of his content will be available to insiders only, as will be all video and most of the audio. There will be a small portion released to my general listeners of Into the Fray, but most all of the content will go to the insiders. I got to spend 2 nights there. I did sleep in the basement, which is in very close proximity to the pool, where a lot of Herb's business went on, shall we say. I spent 2 full nights in the home, and the subsequent days doing filming and recording and keeping everything going for that investigation. So a huge thanks to Rob and Vicky for allowing me to come to their home and do that solo investigation. I actually have the insiders right now doing a little bit of background work and helping me go over some of the audio that I captured there to see if there is anything anomalous that might be heard. So a huge thank you to those insiders. Some new insiders I wanted to mention. A big hello to Brennan, Joshua, Gary, Brenda, Brian, and Glenn. You can also now go to intothefrayradio.threadless.com and get your Into the Fray merchandise. Please be sure, if you do, especially a shirt, tag me in the photo. I would love to see it. Music for Into the Fray provided with permission by Tannic, Electus, and Union C. A big thanks for all your support and for listening to the show.
Shannon, it's your friend Nicholas P. from Indiana. I have some stories I think you and your listeners will find very interesting, and please bear with me. I stutter, so if I start to choke up, that's why. I work for a local school corporation, and I'm a janitor, so I have access to some areas of schools no one else has access. It's been about 2 years since I've been in here. I've heard many stories about some of these schools being haunted. I myself have had an encounter at the school I'm at now, but I'll go over some of these stories. I was told by a janitor I used to work with. I've been in 6 schools now, so bear with me. But he told me he used to work at a school called Monroe. I'll leave his name out of it, but he told me there was a teacher in that school who refused to stay in her room at night because every time she'd set something down and leave, it'd be moved. And then he told me one night he was closing up the school. We have to lock doors at night and everything. He was going down a hallway, and he seen a ball of light, he said, fly across the hallway, wall to wall. He said, and I quote, "I don't give a damn if that door's open." He got the hell out of there. And I guess the story to that school is, I guess a kid years and years ago, it's an old school, got hit by a car and died. I don't know how true it is, but then I have a friend in that school I used to be at. It used to be a high school. It's called LaSalle. I won't give out his name, but he told me a story. He had a teacher screaming and yelling because someone had gone in her room and stacked up all her chairs and tables in one corner of the room up to the ceiling, I believe he said. So they go and check the CCT. No one had been in there all day, and the doors were locked, and so were the windows. Now, the story is about that school. The basement, which I've been in, is huge, and it's creepy. The stage area is supposedly haunted. By what? I don't know, but the school was built during the Cold War, and I guess the basement acted as a fallout shelter. I was told by a guy that they had canteens of water and crackers all over the place. My events I've experienced at the school I'm at now, I won't say its name. Our last snow day, where there's no staff or students, I was upstairs in my hallway scrubbing the floor with an auto scrubber. I go by the staff bathroom, and they have big, heavy oak doors. This door opened up and slammed on itself. I was stunned at the time, so I open up the door. I go in there. There's no one in there. Now, I've also had some other odd stuff happen, like I've had paper start to fall down and fly everywhere, but I think that's attributed to the other story, which I'm undecided if I should share, because as I told you, every time I share this story, this event that took place years ago, bad things always happen. If I can find someone who can guarantee no harm will come to me, I will share it. It involves demonic entities, which I'm kind of scared to even speak about, because the last time I told Shannon that story, the next day I got into an ATV accident. So I don't know yet. But that's some of the stories I have to share, and you're free to share them with your listeners. Thanks, Shannon, and have a good one. Hey, Shannon, it's Nick from Indiana. I'm going to retell my accounts, just seeing that we had some technical issues. And to the listeners of this fine show, please pardon my stuttering. I'm going to try and do my best, but I'm sure you understand. So, I've shared stories about the schools in my area, so now I'm going to share some accounts I've experienced and have been told. Let me give you a little bit of background info on the area where I live. The area I live actually is across the street from where my dad grew up at. My grandparents' house is across the field that is now a subdivision. And this land, of course, was native land. It's northern Indiana. I'm not going to say where, but I was told that down the street from my house there used to be an old fur trading post, and the natives there would trade everything. And also down the street from my house is a lot which they're forbidden from building on. It's supposedly a colonial burial site. Now, years ago, some assholes, I guess, shot the headstones out, and they're not there anymore. But you can still see the indents in the ground. Now, behind that lot's a house they built. It's not even 20 years old, if that. And supposedly, to my knowledge, 8 families have lived in this house, and none of them stay for more than a year. I don't know why they leave, but I assume it's because of that lot. It's literally behind their backyard. Now, my buddies, I think they caused a lot of the issues in my neighborhood, but my girlfriend, she seems to think my whole little area has been dark forever because she has those gifts. So, one day, my friends decided to mess with a Ouija board, and I'm going to detail all the events as I remember them. So, they started playing with this Ouija board, and supposedly they got in contact with a spirit by the name of Germer. I don't know if it's a demon or not, so don't say its name. My neighbor, he owns, next to our neighborhood, 76 acres, but it's surrounded, there's probably 200 in there. My buddies and I, we go out there all the time, and we see these, well, they seen them. I didn't see them until my other account, which I cannot speak of, but they claim they seen shadow figures running tree to tree, and they would see them peek from behind those trees. And my friend, he touched a tree out there, which I call the mother of the forest because it's so huge and it's got an odd shape to it. He claims he had a vision, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what he said. So anyways, moving forward, they kept playing on this Ouija board. My one friend, he lived with his dad and grandparents. Nothing odd ever happened there except for the time that their whole basement stunk of rotten meat. And we know that's associated with demons. Now, I do remember a time we were all at my other friend's house down the street, and it's kind of like an attic or so to say, but the phone goes off, and we think it's our other friend, and we answer it on the speakerphone, and it's just blaring static so loud, and it's unusual because of everything that's been going on. So they ended up messing around more with it before they stopped, for obvious reasons. His dad found out, and well, my one friend's not very smart, and he got smart-ass with the board and decided to throw the platchet. He turns around, and the platchet flies in the air and smacks him in the back of his head. Now, I didn't see this. They said that they seen this. So my friend, he tore that board up. So I don't know a whole lot, if anything else happened. Oh yeah, I do. They told me they left the room one time with the board on the bed, and they came back, and it was balancing itself on the back of a chair, like someone was holding it there. And then there's the time, which I'm going to try and get into before I am cut off here, the time I brought the board home. It was a completely separate board from a guy I don't associate with anymore. So I brought this board home, and they often say you're not supposed to use them by yourself because it leaves you open and exposed to attachments and stuff. But me being stubborn, I decided to hell with it. I got some candles and surrounded the board as I was told to do. So I tried to use this thing. Nothing happened. But then, like 2 or 3 days later, at exactly 3 a.m., the fire alarm in our home goes off. And we're completely dumbfounded because we don't know why it's happening. Later on, Dad found out that I had that board, and he chewed my ass out. He said, no wonder all this shit's been going on. And he didn't elaborate on it, but so I got rid of that board. Now, years and years ago, before I was born and before my neighborhood was even built, my uncle and all his friends would go out in that field and camp. They camped next to the burial site. And this was in the dead of winter. There's snow on the ground. And they have a tent, alcohol, they're teenagers. Yeah, they do all that stuff. But someone brought a board out there, a Ouija board. And they were inside that tent playing on it. And they got in contact with a spirit that claims to be a relative of his. And later, they got a confirmation that that's who it was. It is an uncle that he didn't know. But so they're on the board, and all of a sudden the tent starts to shake violently, and they all scream and ran the hell out of their home. That's one event I was told by Uncle. And then there was a time when my grandparents' phone number had 666 in it, and they had all kinds of strange stuff happen in that house, like the doors and everything would shut and open. But the minute they changed their phone number, I guess, all that activity ceased. Now, there has been a death or two in the area. It's actually two. There's a guy that lived next door to my one friend who we had the staticky phone. There's an old guy that lived next to him. He's a cool guy. I vaguely remember him, but he'd always smoke a pipe or a cigar, if I'm right. He ended up, he blew his head off in that house next to my friend. And my friend said the week after he shot his head off, he faintly smelled cigar smoke in his room. There hasn't been any reports of activity in that house, but it's in the same cul-de-sac as the house that's behind the burial site. And then 2 or 3 years ago, there's a guy my aunt knew. He killed himself accidentally drunk driving. It was his birthday, I believe, and he was out celebrating. And he ended up, he left the bar, I think. So I was told he was going down 90 down this road nearby, and he slammed into this tree at 90 miles an hour, hit this tree so hard that the tree snapped in half and fell on him. My girlfriend says every time, well, back then we'd go down that street at night and she'd see him out there. He would just stand at the site where he died at. And he ended up, he's not there anymore. I don't know what exactly happened. Maybe he moved on. Now, 3 of my neighbors have told me events that's happened in their homes. I'm probably going to have to hang up and call back just to share them because I'm short on time, but I'll get into the first one. I have a friend, his parents' house is on the very back of the subdivision in a cul-de-sac. They weren't the folks that built the house, but he told me when they moved in, there's a big walk-in closet in the basement with carpeting on it that they found what looked to be a shrine and bloodstain on that carpet. And he's told me every so often he'll have doors open and shut on their own. And I've told him some stuff that I know, and I'll probably learn more soon about that event. And then my other neighbor, she lives across the street from the cul-de-sac where my friend's house is and that other house is. And her husband have told me on many occasions they've seen shadow people walking through the house at night. Now, the most interesting story I was told by one of the neighbors was my friend's dad lives in that house where the phone went berserk at because he's got a neat house. It's full of secret rooms and everything. I'm not going to give out a name or anything, but he used to sleep in his basement. He since stopped, but he said every other night something would pull on his feet at night. And he actually would set up EVPs and everything. I don't know if he got anything, but he ended up to go see a medium, and she told him it's a spirit of a lady that lives in, well, she's dead, I mean. She's buried in a nearby cemetery that's about a mile or two away. So he goes there and searches for the name she's given him, and sure enough, there she is. That was the most interesting story I've heard of. But then my friend, he took a camera out to that lot to try and get some orbs. I know some people don't feel that orbs are paranormal, but he got some. But the thing that shocked us all was he said he got a picture of a purple lady in that lot. And as soon as he seen it, the camera had a catastrophic error, and the whole thing basically had a blue screen of death. It was a digital, so he could never get that picture off of it. But there's other stuff that I would like to share someday, but I'm not at liberty to share it yet. Shannon knows why. Maybe someday. But that's basically everything I've heard over my many years of growing up out there. I hope everyone has a good day, and be safe out there.
Hi, Shannon. This is Joe Herbert. We'd talked through Messenger and such a little bit. I wanted to tell you my story. I grew up, was born and raised Waynesfield, Ohio. That's west central Ohio is where that's located, close to Wapakoneta, Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, Lime, Ohio. Well, anyways, we moved into an old 1920s house when I was 3 years old on my third birthday. By about the time I was 8 or 9, I started to hear and see things in the house. One of the instances that I remember was I went to bed upstairs in this old 2-story house, and I was laying there in bed, and I seen 6 fireballs come out of my closet in a row. And the last fireball joined the first fireball and formed a circle and was going around in a circle. And I was just kind of mesmerized looking at this, going around the circle, wondering what in the world was going on. The next thing I know, this fiery demonic head comes out of my closet and eats the fireballs and then sucks right back into the closet, all just bang, that quick. I was froze solid. I was just terrified. I could not believe what I was seeing. And so, I went on. One other night, I was upstairs. This is 9, 10 o'clock night. About 9 o'clock, I went to bed, and I was scared, and I was laying there, and I heard something moving. I got up, and I ran down to the bottom of the stairs and was sitting on the landing with my feet on the floor in the second bedroom downstairs. And something in my spirit told me to look up, and I looked up, and I seen a white ghost horse with this rider that was wearing a cloak. He looked at me. He had a skeleton face, a skull, and he gave me a dirty look. He was able to give me a dirty look, and he laughed at me, pointed with his skeleton finger and laughed at me. And he had a sickle in his other hand. Then he whipped the horse, and the horse jumped through the south second-story wall of the house. Just, for a 9, 10-year-old there at that time, it was just terrifying. What in the world am I seeing? I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Another instance, I was eating breakfast downstairs in the kitchen, getting ready for school. It was about 7:15 a.m., and I'm sitting there, and I get this overwhelming feeling to look at the entryway from the kitchen to the dining room. And I looked, and there was this lady. She was probably about 5 foot tall, in a dress, just staring at me. And I could see through her. I've never seen this woman before in my life. And I'm looking at her, and she's just looking at me, and I'm terrified, froze stiff. After about what seemed like 15 minutes, I watched her slowly just disappear. I ran into the living room. My grandma, at that time, she'd come down and watch me, make sure I got off to school okay. I told her what I'd seen, and she looked at me and she said, you know, that sounds like you saw my mom, your great-grandma. And I was like, what? She went and got a picture. And mind you, this woman died in 1964. I never seen her, never met her. I was born in 70. She showed me a picture of her mom. And immediately, out of like 5 women, I pointed out the woman that I seen. She said, yep, that's my mom. I immediately recognized the woman in the picture as the one I'd just seen. Unreal. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And so, you know, life goes on. Maybe 6 months later or so, I'm in the bathroom, and I'm taking a shower, or I'm in a bath. We didn't have a shower at the time. And I heard this woman's voice coming from the hot water heater asking me to save her, help her. Joey, help me. Joey, help me. It kept saying that. And I knew it was a demon, and I confronted it, and I said, you need to shut up and leave me alone. And next thing I know, I heard this unearthly growling noise, real deep voice saying, Joey, help me. Joey, get me out of here. But it was a real deep demonic voice. I flew out of that bathtub, running in the living room. And I think the thing that hurt me the most over the years was my dad never believed me. He always told me it was just my imagination. He never believed me, and I left a scar. And it really bothered me. And I had another instance where I had warts on my hands. I know you're probably wondering, what's this have to do with anything? Well, I went to the doctor and had these warts removed on my left hand, and they left scars, you know, from where they removed them, burned them off. And they diagnosed the warts on my right hand as being the same kind of warts. So they did the same treatment. A month later, they came back. So I went in. This time they froze them off. 2 weeks later, they came back. Doctor said, I don't know why they keep coming back. They shouldn't be coming back. So my mom asked if I would mind having this preacher pray over them. It's a lady she worked with. It was her husband. I said, no. And at the time, you know, I still do. I believe Jesus. Of course, you know, he's Son of God. I know who he is. I believe him. Well, he asked me if I believe in, you know, Jesus. And to me, that's like asking, do you believe there's such a thing as cars? Well, duh, yeah. So he prayed over him, over my hands for about 10, 15 minutes. Then he said, you know, don't tell anybody what I've done. I said, okay. But 2 weeks later, I still got these warts on my hand. I'm frustrated, you know. I'm getting ready to go to bed, and I asked my mom, I said, how come Jesus isn't taking these warts away yet? And she said, well, do you believe he'll take them? I said, well, yeah, I know he will, but when are you going to do it? You know, yeah, I'm a kid. I'm anxious. I want them now. I want them to be gone now. She said, well, just, you know, have faith. They'll take them. Well, I went to bed that night. I woke up the next morning. They were completely gone. No scars, nothing. And, you know, warts just don't fall off. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I hollered. Mom came in. We stripped the bed. I got out of bed real carefully. We stripped the bed. They weren't there. They were gone. No scars, nothing. I couldn't believe it. So, you know, I'm seeing the power from the other side, the good side. Well, the whole time I'm still seeing things in the house. I see things moving by themselves. I hear growls, just all kinds of weird stuff. You know, the doors opening by themselves. And, you know, I'm just getting nervous about all this. I'm a little kid. It's scaring me. And I'm in the back seat of the car one day. Mom, Dad's driving. And we're about halfway to Wapakoneta. It's a sunny Saturday afternoon. Big billowing clouds, you know, the big cumulus clouds. And all of a sudden, in my head, you know, I didn't hear this with my ears. I heard it in my head. I heard, Joey, look up in the clouds. So I looked up in the clouds, and there's Jesus. I looked up there, and I immediately knew who it was. And he said to me in my mind, mental telepathy, he said, Joey, I am Jesus from the Bible. He said, I am who I say I am. I'm Jesus from the Bible. I want you to know, don't worry about what's in your house. It won't hurt you. I won't allow it to hurt you. He said, don't fear what's in your house. I'll protect you. You're protected and you're taken care of. Don't fear what's in there. And I couldn't believe. I told him, I said, I love you. And he says, I love you too, Joey. And he says, I really do. I love you too. And he said, I just want you to know, don't fear what's in your house. And I took my eyes off of him for a split second, tapped Mom on the shoulder, told her Jesus was up in the clouds. And I looked back and he was gone that quick. It was meant for me and no one else. And then after that, I went home and, I had a whole nother stance on the whole situation. I told it. I said, Jesus said, I'm protected. He said, you're not going to hurt me. You can't hurt me. There's nothing you can do. And I immediately heard banging and growling and stuff. And, you could tell it was visibly mad. Well, one night I went to bed upstairs, and I heard this digging and clawing through my brother's room. My brother at the time was in the Army. I was the only one upstairs. I heard this digging and clawing and digging and clawing on the wall where my bed was up against, coming from his room. And then I heard his bed shaking and banging. He had an old brass bed and old springs. I heard his bed squeaking and banging on the floor. And here I am, a kid, just terrified. But I knew that Jesus said, no, it's not going to hurt you. I got you protected. And that made the difference. And it was just amazing. But yes, I did see Jesus in the clouds. And he talked to me through the mental telepathy, where I didn't hear him through my ears. I heard him in my mind. And he said, yes. I said, you're really Jesus? And he goes, yes. I am Jesus from the Bible. Everything you've read about me is true. But, then as I become a teenager, I bought the book, A Haunting in Connecticut. And I got engrossed with it and read it and everything. But wouldn't you know, within a couple of days of reading that book, things started back up in the house again. Stuff moving on its own and seeing stuff, the whole tree. I'd seen the jackets on the whole tree blowing like they're in the wind. At one point, I heard my mom. I was in the living room, and I heard my mom say, Joey, come here, I need your help. So I got up, went out there, and I said, yeah, what do you need? And she's cooking dinner. I thought maybe she needed me to get something down for her. She looked at me, and she said, I didn't call you. I said, yeah, you did. You said, Joey, come here, I need your help. She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't call you. Wow. It imitated my mom's voice perfectly. So then I went back in the living room. About 10 minutes later, I heard, Joey, come here. This time I do need you. Okay. So I went in the kitchen. There she is. And I said, yeah, what do you need? And she goes, what do you mean, what do I need? I don't need anything. I said, Mom, you just said this time I do need you. And she goes, I don't know what you're talking about. She goes, that wasn't me. I didn't say anything. And I was just blown away. I know I heard her voice twice asking for me, but she swears she didn't call me. And at the same time, I'm seeing, this is 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sunny, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. It's sunny out. It's not night. And here I'm seeing the jackets on the whole tree moving and blowing like they're in the wind, but they're in the house. What the heck? This isn't right. I'm hearing stuff talking to me out of the hot water heater. It's growling at me in that demonic voice, mad, wanting me to get it out of there. And, all this stuff. But then I have Jesus telling me that, I'll be okay, not to worry. Well, then I have another encounter, and this was on the Sasquatch end. We, Ohio has this new Ohio grass. Me and my friend, Mike, he lives at the edge of town in a trailer park. And they have a real nice trailer and everything, I'm about 12, 13 years old. We've been going out into the woods back behind his house, out across the field for years, dressing up in our Army gear, just being kids, playing, One day we went out there and we could hear something following us. And we knew that woods like the back of our hand. There's no human being could come in that woods and us not know it. This thing, every time we turn around, we'd never seen anybody. We couldn't figure out who the heck is following us. But every time we stopped, you could hear footsteps stop. And there was something following us. And we kept turning around. We tried to catch it off guard, by whispering to each other, saying 1, 2, 3, and spin around real quick and catch it off guard. We could never catch what was following us. It always hid. Well, we got nervous, and we decided, let's just get out of here, and we started to run out of the woods. Well, we could hear this big, heavy thing running on 2 feet behind us. I was too scared to turn around and look. I just wanted to focus on getting out of the woods. And we ran about 100 yards out of the woods into the field, and we turned around. About that time, we heard this, about 100 yards away, we heard this ear-deafening, roaring, growling sound that rattled our chest. And I mean, it was loud. Just deep, guttural, growling, roaring, and it was shaking one of the big, tall trees at the front of the woods. And next thing I know, you hear a snap, and it snapped the tree and shoved the tree over. And the whole time it's roaring and growling. I said, oh, heck no. And we shot up to his place and got out of there. Well, about a month later, 7 miles west of our encounter, my buddy, he was at his friend's, his cousin's house, and they were having a family get-together cookout. He said he ran into it again in their woods out there. And he said it did the same exact thing. It roared and growled and shook the trees and snapped. Well, when it happened at his place, his dad didn't believe us. He's like, oh, come on, guys. Well, that time his dad heard it. He said, what in the world was that? And he said, Dad, that's the same thing Joey and I heard over in our place. And so they got the rifles, him and his dad's brother got their guns, went out there, we never found it. But the biggest thing we have in West Central Ohio is a white-tailed deer. That's the biggest wild animal we have. So I know that's no white-tailed deer. This thing must have had lungs as big as my body to make that noise, and just to shove the tree over. Just I can't imagine. There's only one thing it could have been. It was Bigfoot. But that's my story. Yeah, I've encountered demons, Sasquatch. I've seen Jesus. Yeah, you name it. I've had quite an active life. Even as an adult, I have now had the ability. I can walk in someone's house and I can tell if something's not right. If there's something there that shouldn't be there, now I know. So that's my story. That's all I have. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Hey, Shannon, Ed from Vintage Future Society. I thought I'd drop you a line and say I really appreciate the email and the advice you've given on the website and the podcast so forth. It will get off the ground, I promise. I'm working on that part. But I want to tell you about stories. Really can't say. I've had a couple of uneventful events, an OBE UFO sighting and a Bigfoot sighting, but they've all been from such a distance that, the UFO sighting was up on Woodby Island, and that was back in the late 80s. We're sitting there on the beach watching the aircraft come into SeaTac, and it's on their approach path. We saw a light just come up behind one of the airliners. It come in at a pretty good rate of speed. It was, if you take your arm, stick it off to the side of your body, and then point your finger out and bring it directly in front of you in about 1 second. That was about the speed it came behind the aircraft, and it just stayed there pulsing for about 5 seconds or so. And then at the same speed, it shot directly off to the west over the horizon. It was just, in a second and a half, it was gone. And it, that was one of those experiences you never forget. In my OBE, that was probably the scariest event that I've ever had. And that was a lying down in meditation, was really focusing on just, clearing the mind, and on a long exhale breath, right at the end of the breath, right the last part of the breath comes out, it just felt like I fell out of my body. And most people describe, standing up, elevating up, rising up to the top of the room or seeing something else. I fell directly down about at least a body length, which scared the living bejeebies out of me. So that's why I popped back in real quick. And that was I would much rather levitate up than drop down like that again. It was like the top of a ride. They lift you all the way up to the top of the roller coaster, and all of a sudden you just drop. And it was pretty freaky. Bigfoot, that was kind of a weird one. I'll leave that for later. That was 500 or 600 feet away. But again, like I said, I wanted to really just say thanks and appreciate the the emails and the advice you've given. And if you ever decide to have a guest panel, I'd be more than happy just to sit in on that and kind of bring my view on things. I really believe in more of a moment existence. I don't believe that time is there. So everything fits within our existence is how long it takes our brain to process just to that quick synaptic response. And that to me is time and where we reside. I believe in the reincarnation and ghosts and other things like that, alien life. I have no qualms with that. A lot of people